We've got a gentleman here. We're talking about record companies. Fred Foster headed up Monument Records here for many, many years. You've worked with a lot of the characters in this room, haven't you, Fred?
My good fortune, I might add.
Well, I imagine you got a few stories on some of them too, don't you?
This is one I can tell because it's a story that I will never forget. This
Tell
night,
one on me.
you know how well insulated recording studios are. You never hear any outside noises to distract you, nothing to spoil your sound. And I've done hundreds of sessions in the studio, never heard one sound from outside. And Billy Walker was on the label, and he came to me one day and said, "Why don't we do some gospel sessions?" I said, "Yeah, let's do." So George Beverly Shea is a dear friend of mine, and he wrote "How Great Thou Art" and sings it, of course, beautifully. And I discovered so does Billy. And we were recording "How Great Thou Art," and the take was just magic. It was just one of those that, you know, you can feel it. I'm just praying, "Oh, Lord, don't let it break down somewhere." And he gets to the line, "I hear the rolling thunder." The whole building shook. It was the greatest clap of thunder I have ever heard. It went on tape, right on cue, like it was directed. And Billy looked at me, and I looked at Billy after it was over. Everybody kept playing, thank God. Nobody stopped, and we made a great record there. And I said, "Well, I guess he's trying to tell us something, Billy."
Didn't you also make some records with Grandpa Jones?
Yes, I did. I want to tell how I first met Grandpa. I was a big fan of his because I loved 8 More Miles to Louisville and all those things. And he was on King Records, you know, for a long time. And I guess maybe the Apollo people learned from Sid Nathan, who owned King, because he never paid anybody either. I went to one record store in Washington, D.C. I was living up there then. And when 8 More Miles to Louisville was a big record, and I said, "How many of these copies of this record have you sold?" And they said, "About 5,000. I doubt if Grandpa ever got paid on 5,000. No telling what he sold nationally. But I was a promotion man for Mercury Records then, and I came down to Nashville, and I wanted to go to the Grand Ole Opry, and most all of you remember Mr. Norris, who kept the back door. And he became a great friend of mine. I loved him. But anyway, he let me in. He didn't know me. I told him who I was and what I did, and he said, "Well, you just come on in." And Grandpa was wearing makeup in those days. He didn't have his mustache. He had it glued on. And it was in August. It must have been 110. And he was standing backstage in front of the fan, and he was holding his mustache up. And the sweat pouring off of him, and the mustache is trying to blow off, you know. And he said to me, "Well, I look like a she-buzzard up a crabapple tree in a hailstorm." He says, who are you?" And I told him my name. And as I got to know Grandpa, I couldn't wait to go fishing with him because he's telling me all these fishing stories. So I lived out near Old Hickory Lake, and he came out one day, and he's dragging this little boat along, an aluminum boat with about a 7.5 horse motor on it. We get in the lake, and he says, "I know where they are." Well, I know where they are. So we head down the lake, putt along, and all of a sudden he cuts the motor. And I said, what do we do?" He said, "We got to sneak in there in this cove." So he gets his oar, and he puts it in the water and just barely pulls it, you know, making no noise. And boy, my adrenaline is starting to pump, you know. And he says, "Over there by that log is the bass of the year. I'm going to let you make the first cast." I said, "Oh, gosh, man. Well, let me put this by that log, you know." And I was so charged up, I threw it all the way up in a tree. And Grandpa says, "No, no, no." And he starts beating the oar on the boat. He says, "You've ruined everything." He said, I know you can squirrel hunt, but we're fishing."
Did you make that great record with him of T for Texas where he starts laughing before it's over?
Yes, I did.
What was the story on that?
Grandpa, we wanted to do some Jimmy Rogers things, and he can sing those really well. And Ray Eddington was playing the acoustic guitar on those sessions, and he was playing it so great, and everybody was all excited. And Grandpa broke on the yodel at the end, and he thought we were going to take it over, so he started laughing. But everybody kept playing, and then just sort of ended it, you know. I said, "Grandpa, that's so spontaneous and so wonderful. Let's just leave it. And he said, well, all right. So we did, and it was a top 10 record. And we got many, many comments on that. And some of the greatest experiences I've ever had in the studio have been with Grandpa, because it's a thrill always to work with an original, and he's an original.
Was it your session when the drummer showed up and asked Grandpa if he wanted drums on the record?
I don't know.
What'd you tell him, Grandpa?
Prince Albert show.
Huh?
Prince Albert radio show with Jack Stapp.
Oh, that's right.
Let him tell you.
What did you say to him, Grandpa, when they asked you if you wanted drums to play along with you?
Very little, if any.
Bill, on the old Prince Albert shows, we used to go up and rehearse every Saturday. And if anybody, Grandpa was on pretty regular, if anybody had to cut their songs, it was Grandpa. They'd say, Grandpa, can you cut a little bit of your song?
Make it shorter, you mean?
Yeah, make it shorter, you know. So he walked up there one Saturday, we was rehearsing, and he just said, twang, and he hit his banjo and said, is that short enough? A little irritated.
Back when I worked for the Wilburn Brothers, one of my jobs was to book the guest on a TV show. And I would have to have it done by like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because they had that little card where they put their name on it and take it out of the mailbox. I called Grandpa's house one morning to see if he'd do the TV show that night. Eloise, his daughter, answered the phone. I said, is Grandpa there? And she said, no, he's not here. What do you need? I said, well, I need him to do the TV show tonight. She said, oh, well, he'll be glad to do it. He's gone fishing, but he'll be back in time, and he'll do it. I said, okay. Well, about 4 o'clock, I got a phone call. It was Grandpa. And he said, what did you want? I said, well, I told Eloise I want you to do a TV show tonight. Well, I can't do it. I said, well, Grandpa, she told me you would. He said, then let her do it.
Tennessee Ernie Ford came down one time and replaced Red Foley on the Prince Albert portion of the Grand Ole Opry for 7 or 8 weeks. And he stayed with me when he was here. And I would drive him around to different places with rehearsals. And his spare time was taken up entirely of following Grandpa around and writing down everything that he said. He said, where's Grandpa? Find him. And so he'd just follow him around. And if he said, nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs, Ernie would write it down. You know. So I was down at the Opry one night sometime after that, and Ernie had gone home to California, gotten his television show, and was one of the top-rated primetime television shows in America. So I saw Paul backstage at the Opry, and I said, Paul, have you been to California lately? He says, no, but I understand my act is doing quite well.
I wandered so aimless, life filled with sin. I would